welcome back to the room of requirement. Today I'm going to be talking about what spiritual experiences really mean. So let's just go ahead and dive right in. Okay, so the anatomy of spiritual experience. So before I delve deep into this, I wanted to first put a caveat to this video. And kind of let you know what this video is going to entail. Okay, so there are spiritual experiences that are very real, and I don't want to disinvalidate those experiences. And then there are experiences that really happen that are very real, that change your life. So I'm going to be talking about those different type of spiritual experiences that you have. And why they happen and how to deal with them. So just please stick around through the whole video because I'm going to really get into this. It's going to sound at first that I'm speaking like your spiritual experiences aren't real, that they're just distortion and all of those things. And that's not what this video is about. I went through this for years and I speak from it from personal experience. So let's just go ahead and dive right in and get right into this. Okay, but I wanted to explain that right off the bat. Okay, because at first when I'm reading, it's going to sound like that your spiritual experiences don't really mean anything. They absolutely do, and they are very real. But I'm going to talk about the difference of the distorted ones, or the ones that are causing your nervous system to expand, and so you're experiencing new experiences, and then also what's happening when you do have a profound experience that changes the rest of your life. Okay, so you guys just bear with me on this. Unfortunately, the New Age community, they're all about these. This is the entire thing that they focus on, is what type of experience they have. They completely chase them, and then it dysregulates their nervous system. So I wanted to give you an esoteric view from a practitioner who's been practicing all of these things for over 25 years, and what I've recently come to understand within the last couple of years, what these experiences really are. I have experienced quite a bit of really profound experiences, and only a handful of ones that actually aided me in my spiritual growth. Okay, so we're going to talk about the differences to that. So just stick around till the end so that you can fully understand this. Okay. So the anatomy of the spiritual experience. So not every spiritual experience is a sign of growth, and not every moment of intensity carries meaning. So in this video, we're going to examine the difference. You'll learn how to discern when an experience is actually contributing to your development, and how these moments unfold in real practice, and what they truly signify beneath the surface. So through grounded examples, I'm going to walk you through what is happening, why it's happening, and how to work with these experiences so that they become part of your path and not a distraction from it. Okay. So an important clarification: real does not mean what you think it means. So it is important to be very clear about something before we go further. This discussion is not dismissing or invalidating spiritual experiences. These experiences are real in the sense that they are genuinely perceived, felt, and impactful. They can be profound, transformative, and in some cases life-altering. When a practitioner feels a presence during ritual, that experience is real to their perception. When energy moves through the body during breath work, that sensation is real. And when a meditator experiences the dissolution of self, that shift in perception is real. When a devotional practitioner feels overwhelming love, that emotion state is real. The issue is not whether the experience is real. The issue is what is concluded from it. Real experience does not automatically equal accurate interpretation, And this distinction is where clarity is either gained or lost. So I'm going to help you tell the difference between something that is really profound, that is lasting, that you sit with, and something that just may be fleeting, that may be mistaken for something else. Okay? The moment people get lost, there's a point on almost every spiritual path where something unusual begins to happen, and it is rarely explained properly. The practitioner begins to have experiences that feel significant, sometimes overwhelming, and often deeply convincing. Meditation becomes vivid, ritual begins to feel real, and an inner perception intensifies, and the boundary between imagination and experience starts to blur. So for a moment, it can feel like something has opened. You may have already encountered this, a meditation where your sense of self loosened or disappeared, a ritual where the atmosphere in the room seemed to change, as if you felt something was present, and this has absolutely happened to me during ritual magic, a surge of energy moving through the body during breath work that felt undeniable, a dream or vision that seemed more real than waking life. And at that moment, many practitioners believe they have crossed into something definitive, but this is also where many people quietly lose their footing, not because the experience is false, but because they misunderstand what it is. So this can cause seeking behavior, and it can cause depression and disillusion when these things do happen, because they think they've reached some sort of milestone. And the new age community, like I said before, that they thrive on these things because for the most part, not all, but they lack a lot of traditional structure, and they're not taught how to deal with it. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people in the spiritual community that are selling this fast enlightenment. You can do this really fast. All you have to do is A, B, and C. And then they create this whole kind of community about what experience this person had and what experience this person had, and this is what this means, and this is what this means. And it gets so confusing when you're first starting out on a spiritual path, because you don't understand, and these things feel so profound and so real, and so you think you're making real progress, and in some cases you are, in some cases you aren't. Okay, so I recently, in the last few years, figured out what was really going on. So when these, psychic visions that I've had, very profound moments where I feel connected to the divine, all of these different things will start to happen. And so you take them as, oh my God, I'm hitting a milestone, I'm hitting a marker. This means this means that. I'm just here to bring this grounded down for you and in a more perspective. And I'm also going to talk quite a bit about some examples of things that really are creating those milestones and spiritual growth. Okay. I've reached a point in my spiritual path where I will have these visions, but if it does not directly correlate to any kind of spiritual growth for me, I kind of take it with a grain of salt. I observe it, I sit with it, and if it doesn't stay, then I know it's just something about my perception or my nervous system or my psyche making shifts, and it's making my awareness expand. So that's in essence what that is. But let's go ahead and dive a little bit more into this so that you can understand on a deeper level. So the role of experience on the path. Spiritual experiences occur across all spiritual traditions, whether through meditation, ceremonial magic, devotional prayer, or energetic practices. So practitioners consistently report shifts in perception beyond ordinary awareness. These experiences can include altered states of consciousness, symbolic imagery, emotional intensity, and perceived contact with something beyond the personal mind. A ritual magician performing a structured invocation may feel a presence behind them or in front of them, as though something has responded. So I had this happen to me. I felt a presence in the room. I actually felt something touch my hand during ritual. and this was quite a few years back. And so I didn't know what to make of it, but it felt like there was an actual presence in the room. Now I understand what was happening. My consciousness was expanding, the layers of my astral body were expanding, and so I was starting to, increase the vibrationary rate, and it was going farther out into my auric field, and so that's what I was percepting along with shifts in my psyche, and this will happen when you have these type of practices. So a meditator practicing deep concentration may experience the body dissolving, leaving awareness. So a practitioner of Kundalini yoga may feel heat rise through the spine, accompanied by involuntary movement or emotional release. And devotional practitioners may begin weeping during prayer, feeling overwhelming love or closeness to the divine. A chaos magician working with sigils may experience synchronicities that feel too precise to be coincidence. So these experiences feel meaningful because they break the pattern of ordinary perception, but they are not unique. They are a part of what happens when perception changes through practice, and the confusion begins when the experience is treated as a conclusion instead of a phase. Experience versus meaning. So the most important distinction a practitioner can make is that an experience and its meaning are not the same. So two individuals can have a nearly identical experience and interpret them completely differently depending on their framework. A ritual magician may perceive a figure during a ritual and interpret it as external intelligence, and a Buddhist practitioner may experience the same type of imagery and recognize it as a projection of the mind. A non-dual practitioner may see both as appearances within awareness without inherent separation. A Christian mystic may interpret a presence as divine communion. So even something like a feeling of unity can be interpreted differently, and one person may say they merged with God, another may say the self disappeared into emptiness, and another may say that they recognize the separation was never real. So this experience does not define the truth, but the framework defines the meaning. Okay, why experiences happen. Spiritual practices alter the conditions of perception. When attention stabilizes, when sensory input is reduced or intensified, and when the nervous system shifts, the mind begins to reveal layers that are normally filtered out by our auric layer. I've talked about this before, the 7 layers of the aura or the astral body, the different layers. So this is what's happening. It's expanding out and you're receiving more information in, and it's not being filtered out. So that in essence is what you're experiencing, an expansion of awareness. So a meditator sitting in silence for extended periods begins to notice thoughts, sensations, and imagery that were always present but previously unnoticed. So a ritual magician using symbolic structure and repetition activates the imaginal faculty, making archetypal forms appear vivid and real. So the breathwork practitioner alters carbon dioxide and oxygen levels, producing sensations interpreted as energy movement. A yogic practitioner working with the posture and breath begins to feel internal pathways that were previously outside awareness. And from an esoteric perspective, this can be described as an increased sensitivity to the subtle layers of the perception, the astral, the imaginal, or the psychic field. However, increased sensitivity does not automatically mean accurate perception. It means more content is accessible, so experiences arise because perception has changed. Recognition moment. This is where many practitioners assign meaning too quickly, and I was just guilty of that at one point. A meditator experiences a moment of silence and concludes that they have reached enlightenment. A ritual magician feels a presence and assumes it is external and autonomous. A practitioner sees repeating symbols or numbers and assumes they are receiving direct communication. So in that moment, it feels completely convincing. And then the experience fades and the certainty begins to weaken. Common types of experiences. So across traditions, certain experiences appear consistently. A meditator may experience complete stillness where thoughts stop briefly, followed by a sense of clarity, and interpret this as awakening. A Zen practitioner may experience a sudden shift where everything feels immediate and unfiltered, interpreting it as insight into true nature. A ceremonial magician may perform an invocation and feel the temperature of the room shift, hear internal words, or perceive a figure in the mind's eye. This can feel like contact, but it is occurring within a structured symbolic field shaped by expectation, training, and focus. A Kundalini practitioner may feel energized, rising or energy rising rapidly through the spine, accompanied by shaking, heat, or emotional release. This can be interpreted as awakening, but often reflects physiological and nervous system activation combined with attention. Not to say Kundalini awakenings aren't real. In some cases, they do happen. When I had mine, I felt a sense of complete bliss for 3 days, completely connected to the divine, and that shaped my understanding of what divine communion is. So I sat with that for a while, but this experience for me lasted a long time. So not to say that this can't happen, but sometimes it's just a Kundalini activation and not a complete awakening. A devotional practitioner may feel overwhelming love, crying uncontrollably during prayer, interpreting it as divine presence. While meaningful, this is also an emotional opening that can fluctuate, and I've had this happen as well. A chaos magician may create a sigil, release it, and later observe a highly specific coincidence, interpreting it as proof of influence. While significant, this can also reflect pattern recognition and attention bias. A dream practitioner may have a lucid dream or symbolic vision and interpret it as a message when it may be the mind organizing content in a new way. These experiences are powerful, but they are not final. Okay. Experiences. Okay, so what they mean. Experiences often indicate that the practitioner is becoming more sensitive, more aware, and more responsive to practice. Attention is stabilizing, the nervous system is shifting, internal content is becoming accessible. So a ritual magician's perceived presence may indicate deep engagement with a symbolic structure. A mediator's silence may indicate reduced identification with thought. A Kundalini practitioner's sensations may indicate physiological and attentional shifts. A devotional practitioner emotional state may indicate openness. So experiences can show movement, and they can reveal patterns, and they can also indicate responsiveness, but they do not define completion. So I'm at a point now where, and it took me a long time to get there, where when the experience happens to me, I will sit with it for quite some while. I will not try to interpret it, but if it keeps showing up in profound ways, and things happen in my external environment that keep validating it or reiterating it, and then I will receive some type of information or download during ritual, that's how I know that maybe I need to ponder on this some more. And we'll talk about more of this later. Okay. So they do not so what they do not mean. They do not automatically indicate enlightenment, realization, or truth. A powerful experience does not confirm a worldview. It does not validate interpretation. A meditator can experience silence and still be identified with the thought that the next moment. So a ritual magician can feel presence and still be engaging With internal symbolic processes, a practitioner can feel energy and still lack stability, so intensity is not depth, frequency is not realization, and conviction is not absolute truth. When experiences do mean something, okay, so these are markers, milestones, and delayed understanding. It is also important to bring balance to this discussion. Not all spiritual experiences are empty or without significance. Some experiences do carry meaning, and in certain cases, they can mark a genuine shift or milestone on the path. The difference is not in the intensity of the experience, but what remains after it. An experience may be significant if it leads to lasting change, if perception shifts in a way that stabilizes, if behavior begins to change, if understanding deepens over time rather than fading, then the experience may represent more than a temporary state. It becomes less about what is felt in the moment and more about what continues to unfold afterward. And that was what I was alluding to earlier. So when experiences do mean something, for example, a meditator may experience a moment where identification with the thought drops away. At the time, it may feel like a brief state, but over the following weeks, they notice that thoughts no longer carry the same weight. Reactivity decreases. There is more space between stimulus and response. And in this case, the original experience was not the realization itself. It was the opening into the process that continued to develop. A ritual practitioner may perform a working and experience something that does not make sense in the moment. Oh, and this happens a lot. Perhaps a symbol, a phrase, or a presence that feels unfamiliar, and at the time it may seem unclear or even dismissed, but over time, as their practice continues, the symbol begins to reappear in different forms, or its meaning becomes clear through lived experience. What was once confusing becomes coherent, and that's the difference. A practitioner of energy work may experience a strong movement in the body that feels intense but chaotic. At first, it may seem like a peak experience, but only later do they realize that it marked the beginning of a period of emotional processing, increased sensitivity, and gradual stabilization. The meaning was not in the sensation itself, but in what unfolded afterward. So in these cases, the experience functions as a marker and not a conclusion. The importance of sitting with experience. Meaning reveals itself over time. Some experiences cannot be understood in the moment they occur. In fact, the attempt to immediately interpret them often leads to distortion. Meaning, when it is present, it tends to reveal itself over time through pattern, repetition, and integration. An experience should be observed, remembered, and then allowed to settle, rather than asking immediately, "What does this mean?" It is often more accurate to ask, "What unfolds from this?" For example, a practitioner may have a dream or vision that feels significant but unclear, and if they attempt to assign meaning immediately, they may project their expectations onto it. But if they allow time to pass, they may begin to see how that experience relates to later events, internal shifts, or patterns in their own lives. Similarly, a moment of perceived contact or insight during ritual may not make sense at first, but over weeks or months, its relevance becomes clear through repetition or through changes in perception. Meaning that is genuine tends to persist, clarify, and integrate. Meaning that is imposed tends to fade or become inconsistent. Personal symbolism. Not everything translates universally. Another important distinction is that some experiences are highly personal. They carry meaning, but that meaning is specific to the practitioner and does not translate universally. For example, a symbol that appears in ritual or meditation may have a deeply specific meaning based on the practitioner's internal structure, history, or current stage of development. The same symbol appearing to another person may mean something entirely different or nothing at all. A practitioner may hear a phrase internally that feels significant, and it may correspond to any known system or teaching, but later becomes meaningful through personal development. A recurring image may appear across dreams, meditation, and waking life, gradually revealing a pattern unique to that individual. In ceremonial magic, this is often seen in the development of personal symbolic language. In meditation, it appears as recurring patterns of imagery or insight, and in dream work, it appears as symbolic continuity. These experiences are real and they are meaningful, but they are not always transferable or universally interpretable. Discernment. How to know the difference. The question then becomes how to distinguish between a meaningful experience and a transient one. The answer is not found in intensity, but in continuity. A meaningful experience tends to persist in some form over time, reveal additional layers gradually, lead to changes in perception or behavior, and integrate into the practitioner's understanding. A transient experience tends to appear once and disappear, encourage immediate interpretation, lead to attachment or repetition seeking, and lose clarity over time. So discernment is developed through observation and not reaction. Integration over interpretation. The most reliable approach is to prioritize integration over interpretation. Allow the experience to settle into the system. Observe how it affects perception, behavior, and understanding over time. If it's meaningful, it will continue to reveal itself. If it is not, it will pass without consequence. This prevents both dismissal of genuine insight and attachment to temporary states. The main danger: misinterpretation and attachment. The primary issue is not the experience itself, but the structure built around it. A practitioner begins chasing the experience, recreating it, or identifying with it. A meditator may sit expecting silence and feel frustrated when it does not appear. A ritual magician may repeat rituals for the feeling of presence rather than discipline. And a practitioner of energy work may continuously stimulate sensation, seeking intensity rather than stability. And the experience becomes the goal, and the path begins to distort. Recognition moment. You may notice that after a strong experience, everything else feels less significant. You compare your practice to that moment. You try to recreate it. You adjust your method, and gradually the practice shifts from discipline to pursuit. Why this creates dysregulation. When experiences are pursued, the nervous system becomes overstimulated. The practitioner moves from stability into intensity seeking. Attention becomes inconsistent. Emotional states fluctuate, and perception becomes unreliable. In esoteric terms, this is the lack of containment. The practitioner has open perception without stabilizing the structure that it holds. This leads to imbalance, and not because the experience was wrong, but because it was not integrated. So that's the biggest thing. You have to learn how to integrate these experiences, or they're going to do you no good. How traditions handle this. Serious traditions consistently de-emphasize experience. A Zen teacher may dismiss visions entirely. A ceremonial magician records experiences but continues practice unchanged. A monastic practitioner ignores emotional fluctuation and maintains discipline, and the instruction is consistent across systems. Do not attach, do not conclude, return to the practice. How to work with these experiences. Acknowledge the experience. Do not interpret it immediately. Record it if necessary. Continue your practice without modification. Observe patterns over time rather than forcing meaning. If an experience repeats consistently, it may indicate something structural. If it appears once and disappears, it was part of the process. If the experience destabilizes you, reduce intensity and return to foundational practices. Consistency matters more than intensity. Spiritual experiences are not the path. This gets confused so much in the New Age community and in modern spirituality. So they occur within the path. They can indicate movement, but they do not define direction. So without structure, they begin distraction. With structure, they become information, and the practitioner who remains steady develops clarity, and the practitioner who chases experience loses it. The depth of the path is not measured by what you experience, by what becomes stable within you. Experience rises and falls. Sensations come and go. Perception shifts and returns. What remains is what has been integrated: stability, clarity, discipline. If you can encounter experience without attachment, without immediate interpretation, and without losing your structure, then the path deepens in a way that cannot be forced. And in that deepening, something far more significant than experience begins to emerge. Some experiences will stay with you, not because they were intense, but because they changed something. They are not the experience you chase. They are the ones you recognize only in hindsight. And a lot of times they're very subtle. Okay, you guys, I hope you really enjoyed this one. I hope you understand spiritual experiences in a whole new way, in a whole new perspective. I wanted to do something different than a lot of the videos that are out there that really push these experiences. I think it just causes a little bit too much dysregulation, and it just leads to more questions than answers. So it's really important just to integrate these. Okay, you guys, so that's all I have for you so far. Some things I'm going to be doing in the future is a probably 6-part series on the history of esotericism and magic, so that we can learn where all of our magical practices in the esoteric world come from. I may be doing some other things kind of related to this. I'm not quite sure yet, but I will see you guys in a few days, and I appreciate you sticking around this long, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.